it almost seemed like in the 90s, it was a lot of camera tricks, making it look like these fight scenes are super fast and cutting around. And now you get movies like John Wick, and you get movies like The Raid, where it's you're seeing these guys that have learned all these martial arts. They have amazing fight choreographers, and they have some of the coolest fight scenes ever. That's the only thing that I think doesn't hold up well in movies like this, where it's like his knife fight with Tommy Lee Jones. It's cool, but it's kind of cheesy, right? You know, it's kind of goofy, and then he stabs Tommy Lee Jones at the top of the head. That's
the praying mantis.
It's interesting to say the least. I would. All right, welcome back to the Movie Dads Podcast. I'm Howie.
I'm Kyle.
So welcome back. Episode number 4.
Wow.
So yeah, I know. So last week we did the new Evil Dead Rise and the cult classic from 1992, Dead Alive, which I think you and I had a lot of fun talking about that movie. We had a lot of fun watching that movie and then talking about it. So
that was a treat, pleasant surprise.
It was good. I was equally surprised. So today we're going to do our every other week segment, the I Can't Believe You Haven't Seen That, which this one stemmed actually from episode 2, where we were talking about our favorite action stars growing up, and I had on my list Steven Seagal. And
which
Kyle,
I still am a little on that boat of like, sheesh, Steven Seagal. But I will say, my tune has changed just yet.
Yeah, don't spoil us yet, right? So we'll get into that in a minute. But we started by talking about Steven Seagal, and I think you said the only movie you'd ever seen Steven Seagal in was the one with DMX, and I had said Cradle to the Grave, and then you said, wasn't he in one with Jet Li too? Cradle to the Grave was actually the movie with Jet Li and DMX. The Steven Seagal DMX movie was Exit Wounds. So mistake on my part there. But anyway, that
was that 12-month period where DMX was like rocking and rolling in movies. Like he was the man.
I saw a t-shirt yesterday online. And I think I need to order it, but it's DMX in Professor X's like cartoon yellow wheelchair. And he's going like this, saying X gonna give it to you. And I was like, man, I might need that shirt. That's pretty awesome.
Me a good like nerd crossover. You're like actually the king of nerd crossover t-shirts. So
yeah, so my favorite one is I've got the I think I wore it in the first episode, but it's like Jason Voorhees standing on the rooftop with a severed head and a machete, and it's the like Batman the Animated Series cover art. I found one the other day that was like, I don't even remember what album, so somebody's going to roast me for that, but it was a Metallica album cover, and it's all in red, and it's got like a fist in it. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't remember what album cover. Anyway, it's but it's Shredder's arm with the blades, and it's and it says like, so it's a Shredder t-shirt, but that's pretty cool. We're getting off track already, but so today's movie is the action classic from 1992, Under Siege, starring Steven Seagal and Tommy Lee Jones. So,
I mean, when you said, like, as you were talking about the movie, obviously I was like, Steven Seagal, Jesus. But when you said Tommy Lee Jones, and I think even when you sprinkled in a little Gary Busey, I was like, okay, I might be interested in watching that.
So those of you not familiar with the show, we always start off with a little bit of just chatter like this, and then we go into our first segment, which is 6 to Midnight, which is the things that get us excited with for the week. Kyle will introduce that segment. Then I'll introduce us into Under Siege, since it was a movie I've seen and Kyle hadn't. I'll kind of give my thoughts on the movie. That's because that's what we did with Street Fighter 2 weeks ago. You went first. How I felt about seeing it now, because I haven't seen it in a very long time. And then our last segment is There Can Be Only Five, which we each give a top 5 list of things that are movie or nerd media related, and kind of our thoughts on that. There are endless subjects, but I think we came up with a couple good ones for this week.
Yeah, some fun ones that are on brand. So
right. So as movie dads, something that I did last week and first episode, talked a little bit about my kids. So we're in full deep baseball and softball right now. So I took Reagan to softball last week, and it was her first at bat. She missed her first game because she had choir. Part of her grade can't miss it, right? Can't miss it for softball. I get it. But so she goes to her first game the other day, her first at bat, and she totally forgets she's a lefty. Like, she gets in the batter's box like she's batting righty, and I'm staring at her. I'm sitting behind home plate like, is she trying to
is she a switch hitter? Is she
like,
just fucking
is she
stud
ambidextrous all
muffin
of a
just
sudden?
like
Right?
that?
So she takes the first 2 pitches, and the first base coach goes, Reagan, I think you're standing backwards, right? And she's like, yep. And she goes to the other side. First pitch hits a dinger over the second baseman.
Oh my
and scores.
God, let's go.
I know, I was pretty pumped. But there's some old man sitting in the bleachers like next to me for the other team, right? This is 12-year-old. Like, this isn't club softball. Like, we're not traveling around doing like high stakes tournaments or anything. This is like rec softball.
Not yet.
It's an old man, and he's like, you can't switch stances mid at bat. Like, he's yelling at the ump, right? Like, these are 12-year-old girls. 11 and 12-year-old girls.
Are there rules? Are there actually rules like that?
Well, I Googled it, and it says as long as you don't switch, as long as you do it between pitches, you're fine, right? This guy was like yelling at this, like, and the umps are teenagers, right? They're kids, right? It's a rec league. He's kept yelling at him, and all I could think about was that Simpsons meme of like Grandpa Simpson, like old man yells at cloud. Like, he was just mad about everything. Like, come on, old man.
That's
don't be
me.
like that.
I've evolved into that old curmudgeon. I'm the guy in the neighborhood who yells at every car that drives by to slow down.
Slow down.
Even when they're going slow. Though I did save a couple of our neighbors' kids yesterday. Well, neighbors' kids and my own, because mine are always out there too. But in my world with kids, I mean, obviously we have the new little Superman, Cal, and we've pretty much figured out, or at least he has decided, that I am just pretty much walking bed. Like, he sees me, that's my bed. He doesn't sleep on anything but me. For whatever reason, that's his thing. So like, and then he just sees mom as milk cow lady. Like, so
you food, you sleep, I'm good.
Yes, that's milk cow lady, feed me, then put me back on walking beds. That's pretty much what our world is right now. So I'm delusional. I'm keeping it all here in the bags under my eyes, and
pack them up.
Yeah, that's my world. So,
man, that's the life, though.
Yeah,
eat, sleep, poop. Right? That's it. That's a baby.
That's pretty. If a man could decide on what life would be, that's pretty much what we would end on. Sprinkle some video games in there, and
there you go.
And take my money. So, speaking of video games, that's going to be a part of my 6 to midnight. But let's jump into our 6 to midnight segment. This is our most excited segment, where we talk about the things that excite us for the week. So, for me, I've got 2. One is more just a kind of a reference back to our first episode. And then the other one is news that just dropped this week. Well, news, movie trailer, same thing. But Jedi Survivor, the Star Wars video game that I had mentioned I was super stoked to drop, finally did last night at 11 p.m. And so this is a sequel, and basically they took the things that were great from the first game and kept those, and then added a whole bunch of stuff. Really excited. Like, honestly, can't wait to get this pod over, because I want to go and play the video game. But Cal slept on my chest as I was starting the game last night. So opened great. Awesome. Just a ton of fun. Something that I noticed right off the bat is, in the first game, lightsabers could not, like, they it was like if you ever hit like a stormtrooper or a human
Mhm.
entity, it was like hitting them with like a wiffle ball bat. Like it wouldn't lightsabers are supposed to cut through things, right? And so if you ever fought like a droid or like a crazy animal monster, like you like limbs would be flying everywhere in the first game, but then when you hit a stormtrooper, it was just like bouncing off of them and then they would die. In this game, they switched that up. I think they took the notes from people's complaints, and so like within the first 10 seconds, I was, you know, Monty Python Holy Grail. I was taking off arms and legs of these stormtroopers like it was hot knife through butter, and I loved it.
Awesome.
Great game. Super excited to jump into that. But really, my main six to midnight that I wanted to talk about was the second Flash trailer that dropped this week. I mean, it really didn't get anything new in that. What were you going to say?
But we got a lot more of something.
We didn't get anything new, but we got a lot more of the one thing that makes this movie. I'm just going to call this Flash, the Batman movie, because no one cares about the Flash that's in this, especially because Ezra Miller has done a fantastic job of running his career into the ground over the last year or two. But we've got Keaton back as Batman, and this trailer was basically all about him. Like we got, for me, it was awesome to see, even in the trailer, like it's almost like we got a deep dive on Batman 89 and what his like career turned into. We got more looks at what the Batcave looked like. He obviously talks about a little bit of kind of like, you know, what happened to him. And I believe we're 30 years in the future from when Batman Returns happened, is what they are saying in terms of like where he's at in his career.
I'm interested to see how they talk about, like, because obviously in the original, you know, we refer to him as 1989 Batman. Had a direct sequel, Batman Returns. Batman Forever obviously was a new Batman, was Val Kilmer, right? But that was designed as a sequel to Batman Returns, right? We have the same Alfred, we have the same Commissioner Gordon, but obviously we have a new director, we've got a new actor. The tone is much different. It's not near as dark. Batman Forever is a lot more campy. We won't even talk about the fourth movie, but so I'm curious to see, like, is this another one of the instances like Halloween was, where, oh, the first two happened and then we have a branch from reality in a different sequel, you know, because
literally what I was going to compare it to was Halloween, because that's pretty much what they're doing. I think. I can't imagine.
We don't know yet, right?
I hope they don't.
Right.
But man, it looks awesome. I freaking love that version of Batman. I think that it's, from the vibe that I get, it very much seems like they're going with like the Halloween reboot type thing, where basically after Batman Returns, and even them referencing that this is 30 years after Batman Returns, I think is kind of hinting at like the Joel Schumacher stuff is not a part of this. So I think it looks great. I actually, with the Flash, one of my biggest problems with his but I mean, I'm being a classic DC complainer. I like the Flash in like classic Flash, like uniform or suit or super suit or whatever. And in the Justice League, he's got like this, like, it's like armor. And I did like some of the clips they showed of this in the trailer. They show Ezra Miller's like updated Flash costume, and he looks like more classic, and I like that.
Yes, so. I agree. My son actually does. He got he had the old Funko. He really likes the Flash. Flash is his probably favorite DC superhero. So he had like the Funko from the Justice League Flash. He just got the new one from the Flash movie, and it is clearly more of a like a bodysuit, less armor type, like the classic kind of Flash look, which I think is great. Great. 6 to Midnight ties right into mine, because I wanted to talk about Cinemacon and some of the highlights that came out of that. Those of you that don't know, Cinemacon is like a big convention that's held in Vegas, and it's for theater chains, and movie studios come and they're basically like, hey, this is what we've got coming this year, and these are the highlights. Here's some trailers. They even showed movies. They showed The Flash to the convention. The reviews were outstanding.
They showed him the whole movie.
They did. And
Nice.
now I guess it's not a final edit, but it's a pretty close because we're less than 2 months out. But Andy Muschietti, the director, those of you who don't know, Andy Muschietti is the director of The Flash. He's the guy that brought it to the big screen, it Chapter 1 and Chapter 2.
The new ones.
Yes, correct. So he has some
Nice.
very high profile work to his name. He came out and said it's not the final edit, but there isn't going to be, there's going to be more to it. And he was doing an interview with one of the studio heads of DC. I don't remember who it was. And he started talking about how this does reset the DC universe. And they basically told him to stop talking. So,
okay.
Yeah, they don't go in any more into that, was basically what they told him while he was talking. He goes, I might have already given away too much.
That they basically just answered a question from our last episode,
correct?
Right. So this is going to be
and we got it straight from the horse's mouth, so it's not a rumor.
This is DC Rebirth, but they're using the Flashpoint storyline to do that, which we all said is what they should do. So.
Correct. And I think there was talk out there that that's exactly what it was going to do, but it's nice to hear that is, how it's going to play out. The reviews of the movie were superb. It's the funniest DC movie, was what a lot of the chatter was. I knew you loved that.
Why? We have Batman Returns Batman in this movie.
Hey, just so funniest. You know, one joke makes it funnier than all the others. So, because they're not funny whatsoever. Let's be fair.
He did say
it doesn't need 100 jokes, but 5 jokes makes it funnier.
That's a good point. I did catch his "wanna get nuts" line, which I did chuckle a tad.
Yeah. So let's get nuts. A lot of the reviews, there was chatter it might be the best superhero movie ever.
What?
Ever? That came out. There was a couple reviews that said it's in the conversation.
Bar set high. Because you know what you got to beat for #1 comic book movie or superhero movie ever?
Save that for a top 5
right
list.
There.
Save that for a top 5 list. See it.
We'll talk about the 90s.
These 4 guys?
Yeah. The 4 dudes. The tubular dudes.
So, but yeah, lots of good things. I'm not going to go into details on others, but some of the news we got out of Cinemacon, Fast X is going to be split into 2 movies, with the next one coming out in 2 years. But it's going to end the main franchise, is what we're being told. They're making Beetlejuice 2. I mean, Warner Brothers put it up on a sizzle reel. It came right from Warner Brothers. So he did an interview 5 or 6 years ago that said Tim Burton and him had talked about it. And there have been rumblings for a couple of years that Warner Brothers wanted to do something and they had to have the right idea. The fact that they put a item up on a sizzle reel tells me that it's happening. I don't know if Tim Burton or Michael Keaton, you can put the makeup on it. You're not going to know that he's old. He's dead. Right. So I think he
can still, who's dead?
Michael Keaton. Beetlejuice is dead.
Oh, I was like, what? He's
Beetlejuice.
Well.
Beetlejuice is not Beetlejuice. Stop it. Beetlejuice is dead. He's a ghost with the most.
Ever since he came back and did Vulture and told everybody on the set the entire time that he's Batman, that was I guess for the general public, that was the comeback of okay, Keaton's still a dude, but Birdman, is it the Birdman that was his?
Where he got nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah, he was basically playing himself as Batman, but a parody version of it, which was a fucking great movie.
It's a great movie.
Ever since that, he's been on a fucking rocket ship. He can do no wrong. He's
made a lot of great movies.
He's like Keanu Reeves right now. He does no wrong. People love him.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyways.
So highlights, a couple other highlights. I'm not going to get into details on any other of them. We got new trailers like crazy, right? Like we got the Flash trailer, we got a new Transformers trailer, which shows it's like in 1994. Unicron, like anybody who's a big fan of the like Transformers cartoon movie from the 80s, 6 to Midnight, right? That's a big one.
Boing.
We got news on Dune 2, the sequel, which is coming out. We got stills. We got our first kind of picture of Austin Butler. It's kind of a back silhouette. And I'm assuming you've seen Elvis, which he was phenomenal in that. I'm excited to see him
So good.
play that villain role.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool stuff came out of Cinemacon. A lot of stuff in the works. It's going to be a great year for movies.
Did I see a Leo is working with Martin Scorsese?
Yeah, Killers of the Flower Moon. It's basically, I don't know, it's him and De Niro. Yeah, it's Leo and De Niro. Yeah, and I think they're like they're like con men, and it turns into like a mystery kind of thriller deal. But that's a 4-hour long movie. So, and I can't remember if that's
the more the better.
That'll be exciting. So lots. There's a lot. I could go on and on. I mean, this was days. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. They showed 20 minutes of that. Like, it sounds like it's great. It's coming out 2 days early. I think July 12th now instead of 14th. They're releasing it a little early. Lots of news around a ton of movies, but again, for time constraints, like those are the highlights I wanted to touch on. But some exciting news for sure. So great 6 to Midnight.
Yeah.
Cinemacon. If you haven't go through the news articles. There's a ton of stuff you can see. If you're excited about movies and you want to see what's coming up, check it out. And that would take us into our What Do You Mean You Haven't Seen Under Siege?
God. Jesus.
Okay, so I haven't seen Under Siege in probably 15, 20 years, to be honest. Like, it's one of those movies that if it's on TV, I don't watch it because I'm a big fan. Like, you're going to take out all the cool stuff in the movie, the violence.
Yeah, I get that.
So we watched it the other night. You've never seen it.
Never.
There were so many things that I didn't remember about the movie. So I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. Oh my gosh, that's right. That's awesome. Really great buildup the movie had. It tells a very, like, here's the story. Who's this cook? He, like, the captain likes him. They keep referencing, like, oh, the captain likes your cooking. He's a bit of a hothead. He has, superior officers he's battling with, all that. So it sets kind of this backstory. And then, basically they plan a birthday party for the captain, right? The ship's retiring. They have all these Tomahawk missiles. Some of them are nuclear tipped, right? So it's the typical like 90s bad guy movie. Like, somebody stole nukes, But so they cater in this party. They have these cooks. They have a band. They have all this personnel come in on a helicopter for this party. Well, they're all terrorists. And it had a backstory that I didn't remember all the details of. Basically, Tommy Lee Jones is like this black ops guy that worked for the CIA and did all these like nasty missions for him. And then they tried to kill him, to like cover up their dirty laundry. And he's like, no, I'm going to come back and I'm going to steal all these nuclear weapons and make shit ton of money off them. That's right. Basic plot of the movie. And they didn't account for the one member of personnel on the boat on the battleship that nobody knew who he really was. Right. So
the cook,
the cook, right. Turns out he's like an ex-Navy SEAL.
He's basically like Metal Gear Solid Snake. Like, he's a badass.
Yeah. He's a way higher ranking personnel than everybody thought he was. The captain's the only one that knew. There's the scene where they're like, who is this guy? And Gary Busey's character, who's the Commander Krill on the ship, he has to go find his personnel file, and he finds it like in the captain's personal file, because he was hiding who he was and whatnot. So basic premise: Steven Seagal is a one-man army coming through the battleship. All the other soldiers they're like welded into part of the ship. They're going to drown them, and he's got to basically get to them and save them and make sure that they don't take out. I think they were going to take out Pearl Harbor, with the
Yes.
tomahawks. Yeah,
Yep.
and
Yep. Yep.
and and then sell them. So that's the basic premise of the movie. I thought it held up really well. I enjoyed it. The action's great. I'm one of those. I'm one of those people that the action in the last 10 years or so, with the quality of movies they make, I don't know if it's the choreography of fight scenes and things like that. The action in this day and age is so much better than it
Mm-hmm.
was in the
Mm-hmm.
90s. It almost seemed like in the 90s it was a lot of camera tricks making it look like these fight scenes are super fast and cutting around, and now you get
Yep.
movies like John Wick, and you get movies like The Raid, where
Mm-hmm.
it's you're seeing these guys that have learned all these martial arts. They have amazing fight choreographers, and they have some of the coolest fight scenes ever. That's the only thing that I think doesn't hold up well in movies like this, where it's like his knife fight with Tommy Lee Jones at the end. It's cool, but it's kind of cheesy, right?
Yes.
It's kind of goofy, and then he
It's
stabs
like
Tommy Lee Jones on the top of the head, and
that's his
yeah,
fight. He
that's
basically the praying mantis was what
yeah,
he was doing the whole time.
it's interesting to say the least. I would say I would give this movie a solid 7 out of 10. I mean, I think it's a good movie. It's a good action movie. It's a good '90s action movie for sure.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I probably would have rated this a little higher, probably an 8. It was really, really well done. Steven Seagal has a lot of charisma, um, surprisingly, in those
Yeah.
movies. He has a couple
Yeah.
movies that like I said, when I put him on my list, there was a good 8, 9 years at the end of the '80s into the early '90s where he was pretty awesome, and then he fell hard. Let's just put it that way. So
Yeah. He fell into the cookie drawer real hard.
so what'd you
Listen,
think,
I'm
Kyle?
I hate how much I liked this movie. I
Hmm.
hated that I enjoyed it. It was very much exactly my kind of movie from that time frame. Like if I would have seen that movie, I would have liked it like I like the movie The Rock and Con Air, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um Steven Seagal, yeah, like you said, I didn't recognize him. I think that was the first thing I said to you. It was like, holy shit, I didn't God, I just think of him as a big dude with a ponytail. Like so for him, and he was very the strong silent type. So I think that
Mhm.
worked out even better for like he was a badass in the movie. And I'm all about like The Rock. There's a scene in The Rock where like the Navy SEALs come in, and like I like that. That's like a big favorite part of that movie for me. So like this movie felt like that the whole time. Um, Tommy Lee Jones, man, it's interesting seeing this and not seeing this before, and then knowing what I thought was always an outlier with Batman Forever with him as Two Face, because he plays a fucking crazy zany, like weirdo, full of energy bad guy in Batman Forever. And his like the crazy zany side from that movie was like he went full bore and Under
Mhm.
Siege with that. Like a lot of yelling, laughing, like acting fucking weird. And I loved
One-liners,
it. Yeah,
like
his one-liners were freaking great.
he chewing dialogue, like and spitting it out, like he was. Don't be a bully. Like
Yeah, he is just fucking great in the
yes.
best ways. Gary Busey, this was before I'm not going to attack man for his mental health, but like this is
Mhm.
before crazy Gary Busey. This was back like when he was really good, and I
Mhm.
liked he's like the perfect good guy slash bad guy, or good guy turned bad guy, or however you want to say it. Spoilers, I guess. I mean, this whole thing is spoilers. So,
Yeah, we're not.
um,
No, it's a 30
I
year old
thought
movie.
it was so like they bring this crew on, and then they immediately start like crew are doing like construction all over the boat.
Hmm.
And for the longest time I couldn't figure out what the fuck they were doing, but they were basically building like a rail system to remove the missiles, the Tomahawk missiles, and get them off. Apparently you can't just like pick something up and move it. You've got to build basically a rail system through the entire boat, which which I thought was like an interesting, like, why did they have to add that in the movie? It's 90s or 80s, like crazy. So it I kept looking at you and asking a million questions as we were going, but like it was literally the same premise of The Rock, which you reminded me that it came out before The Rock in terms
Mhm.
of badass black ops slash special forces military leader gets slighted by the US government
Mhm.
slash military and then goes rogue with his guys to
Mhm.
steal missiles to then shoot them at the general public. Obviously there were differences in, like, I think The Rock clearly, now seeing this movie, took a huge part of like the story and plot from this movie and did their own version with it.
Well,
But
obviously,
maybe
Ed Harris's character in The Rock is a lot more noble.
yes, that's what. So in The Rock, they're like they're more of a noble cause. He's like
Mhm.
this badass general, and you as a viewer kind of side with them a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
Um, and I think that obviously that was the difference that kind of makes for me the story of stealing the rockets for the reasons that they did a little bit
Mhm.
cooler for The Rock, because Ed
Mhm.
Harris is badass and like
Mhm.
it just seemed cooler. And where it lost me with Tommy Lee Jones is like he was slighted by the CIA. They tried to kill him. So then he's flipping it on them of like, screw you guys, I'm going to take your stuff and make you pay for it.
Mhm.
But like but then once we get kind of to the part where we find out why, it's because he wants to make money. He's just going to flip it to make money. Like he's just like a typical like run of
Terrorist.
the mill
Yeah.
villain terrorist. Like
Yeah.
I just want money. I'm stealing your missiles. Instead of like,
Mhm.
you guys tried to kill me, I'm gonna Jason Bourne take all of you out for doing that. It was like, I'm just gonna steal your missiles and I want to get money for it.
Mhm.
I still thought it was awesome. I really enjoyed it. Um in terms of like that 90s action. Tommy Lee Jones was great. I'm super annoyed at Steven Seagal. Or that Steven Seagal was actually interesting. I thought it
Mhm.
was funny that they just classic 80s slash 90s. They have to sprinkle like a female like
Right.
heroine
Yeah.
character in this, and he meets her. She's not part of the terrorist crew, but she's part of the crew that comes on.
He's a
Because they're disguised
Playboy
as a
model.
band.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they're disguised as a band. She's a Playboy model that's going to be like that's going to jump out of the cake at this birthday party. She gets sick on the plane, takes a bunch of seasick pills, and takes more than she should and falls asleep. So she wakes up and everybody's dead except Steven Seagal. And I just thought it was really funny that like they immediately were like together. Like he throughout the
Mhm.
movie, there's like scenes where he's like holding her close and like kind of messing with her hair and stuff. That I'm like, you just met them like 5 minutes ago, and people
Yeah.
are literally getting shot in the head all over the fucking boat. Like,
I
what's
mean, he's
happening
seen her
here? So
naked, so, you know.
that is true. That the very first time he sees her, actually.
She
So
jumps out of the cake naked.
yes, the one thing that I would say is different than The Rock that makes this cooler and for specific reasons is like The Rock. They were doing. You could tell they weren't like they were bad guys, but they weren't killing people. They lose a guy when they steal the rockets, and that's a bummer. And
Mhm.
that hits them hard. But they're
Mhm.
not like going and fucking capping dudes in the head. Like this movie, it's opposite. Like the bad guys are bad guys. Like
Yeah.
they fucking kill people left and right.
Immediately. That's how they start off with the terrorism. Who's the highest ranking officer on this ship? And bam, dead. Dead.
Boom,
That's
dead
how you
right in the
started off.
face.
Start the takeover.
Yes, which I thought was great. Or like they're moving hostages through the stairwell, and they're like move, move, and a couple of guys are like, no, like we're not going to listen to you, and they're like,
Mhm.
bah! Like they just shoot them down. So,
And then Tommy
um,
Lee Jones shows up and shoots the next guy and says, "That's what happens if you try to do anything. We're going to kill you and the soldier next to you." You know, yeah.
yes, so like which brought the stakes up higher to be like, okay, these
Mhm.
guys are actually fucking like killers, and they fire off a rocket. Don't they fire a rocket off and
Yeah, at the
explode on
beginning.
something? Like
Yeah. Mhm.
they straight up like in The Rock. I don't know why
Yeah.
I'm taking this to just be a comparison to The Rock. But like in The Rock, they find like it takes forever for them to finally shoot a missile because Ed Harris doesn't really want to do it. He never planned to do
Correct.
it. And luckily the chips were taken out and it crashes into the water. But guidance chips, by the way, not potato chips. But in this movie, it's like they don't even fuck around. Like they get in there, they get the rockets. Like they are like, we're here to fuck you up. So
yeah.
Anyways, I went a little bit ham on that review, but I gave it a 7 out of 10. And honestly, it's funny that you say that you would have given an 8, because when I was looking at this for my rating, I was like, it's like fucking so dumb that I liked this movie. But if I would have seen this back when it came out or around that time frame of my childhood, it would have been an 8 or a 9. Like I would have thought it was fucking cool.
This was our kind of movie. I mean, this isn't single-handedly the movie that put Steven Seagal on my like action stars list, but it's his best one. I mean, there's no doubt about it.
Yep.
So,
oh my God. Wild. Interesting.
Well, I'm glad to see that you enjoyed your time with Casey Ryback and him killing people and
I will never watch the second.
Saving the world.
You'll never get me to watch Under Siege 2, The Train to Disaster. Whatever.
It's Under Siege on a Train. Under Siege 2, Dark Territory.
Talking about this has, you know me, I changed my list throughout these pods. Like, I think I'm not changing it to what you think I'm changing it to, but it made me think of something and someone else.
Something else, something similar.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. We'll get to those lists in a second. Well, go ahead.
Go for it. I was going to say, I'm just going to add them to my honorable mention. So.
Oh, there you go. But I'm glad you enjoyed this movie. I knew you would, because I know you at least are open-minded with things, and I know it's a well-made 90s action flick. So yeah, that's awesome. Obviously we picked this movie up. We had already planned on doing Hudson Hawk as the movie, but we'll save that one for a episode in the near future to come.
Okay.
So, but that is our, I can't believe you haven't seen it, movie of the week.
Love it. I love that. Let's jump into There Can Only Be 5, right? Like, I'm ready for the list.
I want to do the call. There can be only 5. I just want
only 5.
I just want Christopher Lambert on like a Scottish Highland with a sword doing it.
We should get one of those so that when we do this segment, we can do some cool, like,
cut that in. We'll add that to future episode budget.
I love that. Okay, so for this week's There Can Only Be 5, I'm going to jump out to the start. Just as a little bit of a callback, we recently did Evil Dead Rises. We did kind of scary movie stuff, best horror franchises, and like there were a lot of movies that I wanted to talk about that we couldn't. And then it just got my wheels turning of like, why don't we just do like the scariest movies that we've seen or that we think are our top 5 scary movies? So this There Can Only Be 5 is top 5 scariest movies of all time, in parentheses, for me. And then for you. So, because a lot of people will not agree with me on my list. So,
do you think we'll have similar movies?
No,
I don't either. Because I think we have different things that scare us.
I agree.
I'm gonna circle it because of the one that I think we both probably have on our list.
I think there is one. Can you stop wearing Chief stuff in these pods?
Listen.
I'm gonna start putting my Jaguars stuff up just in everything we do.
Hey, it's draft weekend right now.
Yeah, that's why
we had the first round. This isn't the Movie Dad's football podcast. Like, we haven't evolved into that yet. But
I think people need to understand that that's a big part of our dynamic. So
it is. Anybody who watches this that doesn't know us personally are probably like, these guys live in their basements, because the way we. I'm in my basement. But we both have our basements are our sanctuary, but we don't live down here. All right.
It's the Bat Cave.
Anyway, yeah. But we both are I think this is part of why we get along so well too, because we both are into a lot of the same things. Like we both are very passionate football fans for our teams. You give me a lot of crap because my team's good. But I've been a Chiefs fan since I was single digits. I was 8 or 9 years old, and I've been through it. And I've been through what you went through the last few years. And you look like you guys are on the up and up. So congratulations to the Jaguars.
Please.
How you feel about that offensive tackle you picked last night?
I listened to it was boring pick. I was a wide receiver in college. I coached wide receivers. Give me a flash. I want the flash. I want the divas.
Sexy pick. You want a sexy pick.
Yeah. So listening to the general manager talk about it, he was like, we had 3 guys on the list that we wanted, and if we traded back, we could get spots, and one of them was still going to be there. So he did the right move. Anyways, I've been a fan of the Jags since '95. So like I've actually been a fan of my team since their inception, unlike someone on this podcast. But
the Chiefs were founded in like the 60s, so I was
whose fault is that? Well, whose fault is that?
My parents. They should have been Chiefs fans.
Anywho, okay, let's jump into it. There can only be 5.
I turn my cup.
Scariest movies ever. Okay, for me, maybe we have 2 on here. I think 1 for sure, but maybe 2 now that I'm looking at it. My number 5 scariest movie of all time, which I think is also on a lot of other people's, maybe even higher on most people's list, but number 5 scariest movie of all time, the original Exorcist. What a scary movie.
That's a classic.
I saw that as a kid, and it scared me. It did what The Ring also did, but because it was the original, that's where it's going to stay. But like the main scary lady, they just made her look so freaking terrifying.
Well, it's a girl. Like, it's a little kid. It's a kid, you know.
I know, and she talks with a man voice, like a big, deep, double voiced together. It's like
we talked about. That's how they do possession movies, right? Like they take the normal voice and they put like Barry White's over it, and they push them together.
They fucking take the guy who does the voice of Darth Vader and they put his
James Earl Jones.
Yeah, it's fucking terrifying. So anyways, she's scary looking as hell. Her eyes are fucking horrifying. That movie like instilled a fear in me of Ouija boards. I will never, ever touch a Ouija board. For most people that maybe don't know the premise of that, she gets possessed because they don't show it on camera, but they talk about her and her friends were messing with a Ouija board. And that's how she ended up getting possessed before the movie starts. So number 5, Exorcist. Number 4, Hereditary. This movie was scary. It has been a really long time. And by really long time, I mean never, that I've watched a movie that I had to turn off the first time I was watching it. So
I saw that movie in the theater, and like
hard pass.
It was like I walked out and I was like,
it's uncomfortable. And
it's unsettling.
Scary. That's a great word. I had a friend, or have a friend, who I referenced. She's also the friend that didn't know what 6 to midnight meant and Googled that. So shout out Bradley. So she was the one that suggested, she's a big horror fan. She suggested, watch Hereditary. I was on a work trip. I was in a hotel, so I was by myself. I put it on. And after 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I stopped it. I was like, I'm not watching this until I have another human with me, because I'm going to die in this hotel room if I don't. So number 5, Hereditary. Maybe that's not a scary movie. Number 4. Sorry, number 4.
You're good.
Maybe people won't think that's a scary movie. Maybe it's more unsettling, but to me, like it was, I couldn't watch it. So number 3, this movie kicks off 100 miles an hour, and where it's very like, you have to like step back like, oh no, that's terrifying. Sinister. I don't know if you ever saw Sinister, but Ethan Hawke is the main actor. It's basically the director and writer had said he had nightmares after watching the movie The Ring, and so he took some of the premise from that to make this movie. Basically, from like they see like adult murder snuff films that then turn into people dying because of it. So
Yeah.
um, it was there's just something about it that is was really scary to me. And so I put that in my list. I did not put Insidious or The Conjuring in here. I know a couple of my friends are going to be upset about that, but shout outs to those movies because they were good. But here's where I get in my two favorite scary movies of all time.
Mm-hmm.
And they are my favorite because one, they terrified me, and two, they were actually freaking good movies. So, number two, no one will have this on their list. The Others. Nicole Kidman, she's her and her two kids, they live in this house, this giant mansion. It's like in England or something, but it's in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of this forest.
Mm-hmm.
They have to keep the blinds closed everywhere because the son has like a disease where he's allergic to sunlight. So like
Mm-hmm.
they basically are in their house keeping it dark at all times. But all throughout the movie, like the son says he has a friend, like an imaginary friend that's a ghost, and the wife Nicole Kidman, she's like hearing noises and doors are opening and closing, and like people are running around the house, but she can't find anybody. And so like it's this really creepy, like just really uncomfortable movie the entire time. And there's like a part in the movie where she's like with her son, and he's like, they're upstairs in my room, and she's like, no, they're not. And then like it gets really quiet and they look up, and then you just hear like really heavy thumping footsteps run across the room,
Mm-hmm.
and she like freaks out.
Right.
Spoiler warning. What were you gonna say?
No,
You
no,
were
no.
gonna jump in.
I
Um,
I've seen it. It was okay to me. It did not make my list.
I figured that this would be not really a scary movie for people, but for me, it was scary because at the very end, spoiler, you find out that they are actually the ghosts,
Mm-hmm.
and they are the ones that are stuck in the house because the mom actually went crazy and killed both of her
Yeah.
children, and they are they're the ones haunting the house, but they don't know it. It
Right.
was fucking great. Huge twist at the end.
It's
Scared me.
it's a creepy movie. It's very atmospheric, right? Like the whole
Yes,
big
very much so.
mansion. Yeah.
Yes.
The
And I like
favela
the
they
mystery
lived
to
in.
it. So, okay, here, number one. This is actually a terrifying movie because this is the one movie I watch and I say that could happen. Technically, they say it's based off true events. I'm not sure I believe that. Maybe it is, but like The Strangers. I don't know if you've
Mm.
ever seen The Strangers,
Yep, I've
but
seen it. Yep.
this couple,
Yeah.
they basically are staying in a house, and the wife is there by herself before her significant other arrives, and
Mm-hmm.
she's in this house in a regular old neighborhood that all of a sudden someone bangs on the door. She goes to the door, there's nobody there. She starts doing her own stuff. It's late at night, so she's kind of weird. She doesn't live there, so she's like
Mm-hmm.
visiting. And then someone starts banging on the door again. She goes out. There's a girl standing outside, just like standing there staring, not responding. She tries to talk to her. Girl disappears. And then like all of that continues to like raise the stakes throughout the movie where like people are banging on the windows and like she's freaking out. Like things are walking behind her often
Mm-hmm.
through scenes that she doesn't know. And like that movie I saw in theaters just fucking scared the shit out of me. And mainly because like three psychopaths could easily decide that they just
Yeah.
want to terrorize a house one day and just
Mm-hmm.
go start banging on the windows and banging on the doors. And if they wanted to, you know, there are people that leave their houses unlocked and stuff or don't pay attention. Like it was so scary. They did a sequel to it, which was pretty good. It didn't capture exactly what the first one did, but like that movie was like all time fucking terrifying to me. So
No,
I
I get
picked them.
that. It's yeah, that home invasion. It's because it's so real, right? It's not supernatural.
Yes.
It's it could really happen. I get that. Yeah, I get that.
And they have like hoods and masks on. So like
Creepy ones.
oftentimes if I'm up super late and like walking around or going to get something to drink, like I'll casually look out the window, and maybe I'm weird for having these thoughts, but I think like, what if there was just like a fucking girl standing there staring at me through the window? How terrifying would that be? That
Mm-hmm.
movie, that's what that whole movie is. Oftentimes she sees a knock and she looks, and way out in the distance in like the tree line, there's just like a man standing watching her. Like,
Mm-hmm.
fucking what? So,
Yeah.
anyways, I think people will probably roast me for that. It's maybe not a scary list, but for me, those are scary movies.
No, I think
So,
I think it's a solid list. We actually had two movies that were. You have two movies that were on my list, and it wasn't the one that I thought was going to be on there.
oh,
So surprising.
tell me
But
more.
no, it's a good list. It's a good list. I liked it. Good job. I
Okay.
didn't feel like I could crap all over you like I wanted to, but
Okay. That's,
we'll
I
get
think,
there.
for a different kind of demographic, but okay, let's go.
Not literally. All right. So
Gross.
number 5, I had Hereditary. At number 5. Is that the one you thought we'd both have?
That is the one that I thought
Yeah.
we would both have. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you watch that movie, you feel unclean. It's
Yes.
Have you ever watched it again?
I went back and like watched
You
the whole
finished it,
thing
right? You
because I
finished it, but you
needed
never
to.
watched it again after that, right?
I will never
I
turn
will
that
never
movie
watch that
on
movie again.
ever.
I will never watch that movie again. And the biggest takeaway I took from that movie was like Toni Collette is a phenomenal actress, and the fact that she didn't get nominated for a single freaking thing for that movie bothers me because she's so emotional when the daughter dies, and then
Yes.
she's
Oh my
so
God.
terrifying and over the top. She's so mean to the son, like, and
Yes.
rightfully so.
Yep.
But
Yep.
like the whole movie, like you're just like
It's
grabbed
so
onto your
uncomfortable.
it's so uncomfortable. Number
I
4,
think
I
at that,
had go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think at that point I need to stop talking about this in our shows, but like I've had some loss in that
Mhm.
movie, like that part of like there's a lot of grief in that.
Yes,
So
yeah.
like that
Oh,
whole
very.
movie is just like it's heavy. It's very
Yes, it
heavy, and that's
is.
why I didn't want to watch it.
I
So
mean, it spiraled into like I went and saw Midsomner the night it came out, like at midnight.
mhm.
Um and because I liked this movie so much and hated it at the same time, you know.
You're
Those are
like, I
both
have to see
movies I will
Midsummer.
yeah, but they're both movies I'll never watch again because they're
Yes.
so uncomfortable.
Packers.
Number 4, I had The Ring. Hey, I have a PG-13 movie on my list, but that movie's creepy as hell. Like it is creepy. It's dark. Like
Mhm.
there's no colors in that movie. It's very black and white. The
Yeah.
palette they use, it's always raining. The kid's the creepiest part of that movie, and I don't mean the
So
girl. I don't mean
fucking
the girl coming
scary.
out of the TV. I mean that little boy is creepy as hell. Like that kid's
Oh,
creepy.
yeah. That I almost so like Sinister and The Ring. I went back and forth. I actually wrote each down
It,
and then scratched the other and put the other because they're
I
similar.
had Sinister like it was close. Like it almost made it. Like it was right on the outside looking in. That's a good movie too. But yeah, so The Ring, like that's a creepy movie. It's very
Yes.
it leaves you with some weird feelings at the end, you know.
Like I can never like if anyone, my wife will do it. This will like fuck with me, and I hate it. But like that sound whenever she picks up the phone, it's like
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah. Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that to me because
Yeah,
that's
the other movie I kind of had like just on the outside of the list too was The Grudge, like
yeah.
the
Yep.
Sarah
Yep.
Michelle Gellar one, like the thing in the attic. No, nope,
Or
nope,
is it The
nope, nope.
Grudge or is it The Ring?
Well, The Grudge
Which
is the
one
one
does
where
the
that makes that
Oh shit. So okay,
sound.
so I'm fucking referencing The Grudge, but they're essentially like the same.
They're very similar with different, like the ones in
Damn it.
Japan and the house is
Such an
cursed,
idiot.
and then The Ring is the girl, the videotape, and all that. But I mean,
Yeah,
I
but the
get what
bad
you're.
guy has the same like hair
Yeah,
look,
yeah,
right?
like
It's like
just
almost
like
looks
just the
like
eyes showing,
yeah, it
through the
almost
hair. Yeah,
looks like she's like they took Jason Voorhees and put them in two different movies. That's kind of the villain seems
it's
the same.
creepy.
So
They're both
all right,
creepy.
I was wrong on movie quotes there, guys. I
You're
was
good.
thinking about
You're
The
fine.
Grudge.
Number 3, I had The Conjuring. The original Conjuring. This is the one I thought we would both have. It's I don't know. A lot of this is all based on the first time I saw a movie and how it made me feel.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
first time I saw The Conjuring, I was scared, like legit scared. The We've talked about that before. That no, none of that.
Yeah.
I don't want any part of that. It's dark basements, creepy old houses, all that stuff. Man, that's
But what
It
about when
doesn't.
the old lady's on top of the wardrobe and she like jumps down
Yep.
at the mom?
Oh yeah, yeah. Creepy as hell. All of it.
Mm.
Or was that the one with the music box where she's looking in the mirror and then the you know what I'm talking about, like the
Yeah,
kids.
yeah, that is
Yeah,
the same
yeah,
movie. Yes.
yeah. That's no, don't like it. Creepy, scary stuff. But I'll watch that movie again because it's a good movie. It's a really
Fucking
good movie.
so fucking.
Number two, I had the Exorcist.
Oh.
It's probably, I mean, if you go back, that's the movie that's probably on the most scariest movie of all time list.
Yep.
I think the only reason I probably put it above The Conjuring is because it's so ahead of its time. Um, it was so well done. There's so many things that happened around that movie. There's so many scenes that are creepy and unsettling. We're not even talking about just the demonic possession, her with the
Mhm.
cross and like the vomiting the pea soup and the crab crawl down the stairs. Like that's
Oh.
yeah. Even the spinal tap scene, which is where the blood's like bleh, bleh, in the
Mhm.
hospital, like that's all creepy. That's it's a scary movie. The
That's
classic.
the
It's a
that's the other one
classic.
that I was like, "Ooh, I think we might actually have two on here." That was the
Yeah.
second one, so I was right.
So the one I have at number one, it's a lot of. I'm gonna get roasted for this. Like you think you're gonna get roasted for The Strangers, I'm gonna get roasted for this one. And this had to do a lot with the fact the way I felt after I saw this movie the first time. Um, I'm a big like the unseen is the thing that scares me the most. Like slasher movies, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, all that. You see them, they're there, they're in front of you.
Mhm.
When you can't see what's there, and I lived in the country, so I lived like out like right on the edge of the woods. The first time I saw the Blair Witch Project, I was traumatized. The
Okay.
original, I
I
was
saw that.
traumatized.
I saw that on a few lists too.
And this
That's
was like at the time when it came out, I'm older than you. We've established that. You call me old,
I
whatever.
remember when it came out. It
But
was
I
a
was old enough
phenomenon.
yeah, I was old enough to like go see it in the theater, right? Like, and there was all the chatter about like, is this a real thing or is
Real, yeah.
this, you remember that? Like their
Yeah,
marketing
they're
was
the original found footage
fantastic.
film.
Yeah, it was that movie like set the found footage bar. It was like the most, highest grossing independent film ever made for a while. It
Mhm.
made tons of money because it had that effect. And I remember the night I saw that movie, I went home and I turned on all the lights and went to bed. Like that's how I was traumatized.
That's
I,
that makes me think of a movie that I missed that made us do that. The Witch with the two V's or whatever.
yep.
That movie was. That's a movie that I mean, maybe that I'll throw as honorable mention. My wife and I, like when we came home, like we had to sleep with the lights on. Well,
You're like
she had
burning
to.
sage and stuff.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
also had just had a baby, so like
Mm.
there's a
Yeah, that
scene in
makes
that
sense.
movie that traumatized her. So, anyways,
So good list for you. I like your list. A lot of people don't like Blair Witch Project. They think it's stupid. I always like say, well, it's smart person horror. No,
yeah,
I say
when
that,
you
but
look, it's easy to look back with hindsight and with other movies that have come out and say that, but at the time,
yeah,
it was a
yeah,
horrifying movie. It was a phenomena. Like everyone saw
hmm
that movie or wanted to see it. They parodied it.
yep,
Scary movie. Like it's a horror classic. I would even
yeah.
say.
I
So,
agree. I agree.
um, so love that.
Yeah. So this leads into my "There Can Be Only Five" list, which I am going with our Under Siege theme of today, and I wanted to do top five one-man army characters. All right, so I'm thinking like the movie or movies. I'm gonna get into where my stipulations were at.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
the kind of movie where it's basically like you have one hero and he's got to fight everybody,
yep,
right?
yep.
So it's an off the wall kind of subject, but I thought it fit in because Under Siege, like Casey Ryback's very much like, listen, there's other supporting characters, but he's pretty much doing everything on his own, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
some of the stipulations I use. Now, I had a couple characters that I wanted to put on this list, but I decided I wanted to have somebody that had at least three movies that
Okay,
they were in. So that was as a
we
rule.
did we had different stipulations.
Yeah, because I had a long list, and I was like, I'm going to pick somebody that had at least 3 movies. I had at one point like Rama from The Raid and The Raid Redemption, like, but in the first one he's part of a police force. Second one he's kind of on his own. The Bride from Kill Bill was somebody I
Yeah,
had
yeah,
like
I
on the
saw her
list.
on some
Things
list.
like that. So that was kind of that's Casey Ryback from Under Siege and Under Siege 2 is a character that could kind of fit that mold. But so here's my list. And again, we're doing characters, not actors. So I might have somebody that's been played by multiple people.
Okay, so that was where I was going back and forth too. Of like, are we?
Mhm.
Because I have a couple on here that's characters,
They're
not
characters. Yep.
specifically like a
Yeah, we
movie or
did
an actor
characters.
that played
Right.
them. Okay.
So number 5, I had Brian Mills from the Taken franchise. Liam
Love that.
Neeson's a badass.
Fucking
That
badass.
first movie rocks so hard.
I
The
will find you and
Yeah,
I
and
will
I
kill
will
you.
kill you. The part where he's like, and you gotta get like the R-rated or unrated cut, right? Because it's
Good
better.
luck.
Yeah.
So good.
But he's like torturing the guy, like he's sticking like the metal probes in his thighs, and he's like electrocuting
Yes.
him. Like he's a badass.
That's like the ultimate like parent, like dad movie that's like, this
Yeah,
is who I will become if my kid is ever
yeah.
kidnapped.
And I wasn't in the CIA, but I'm still gonna do it. I just have more
Yeah.
guns. But
Yeah.
like this I feel like this kind of led into like the old guy action comeback too. Like, did you see Nobody with Bob
I
Odenkirk?
almost had that on my
Oh
list. I
man,
didn't put him
that
on, but
movie's
I
so
almost
fun.
did. It
So
was so
fun.
awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome
it's a fun
movie.
movie, but I just feel like this, like Taken is the franchise that kind of rolled into that, right? Number
Yeah.
4,
Yeah.
I had Max Rockatansky from Mad Max. So that's
Okay.
who I had
Love
at number 4.
that.
This is somebody that was played by multiple characters. Obviously, Mel Gibson in the original 3 films, Mad Max, The Road Warrior, and Thunderdome, and then Tom Hardy in Fury Road. Great character, post-apocalyptic, tons of action, lots of cool scenes, right? Like Road Warrior is an all-time classic. Fury Road became an all-time classic when it was
I
released. It
just
was,
recently watched that again because
and we
it's
talked about it.
such a good movie. So
Really
good.
is a lot of good things: art direction, cinematography. He's a badass character though, and he
Fucking badass.
in those original couple movies he kind of is the one-man army, right? Like Fury Road obviously
Yes.
is a little different, but I picked him kind of based more on the beginning part of the franchise. Number
Yeah.
3, I had John Rambo. I know I got some crap for not having Stallone on my action actor list, but he
That
was
was a
on the
travesty.
he was on the outside. Listen, I wasn't a big Rambo fan, but at the same time, when it comes to this category,
He's the poster child.
he is. John Rambo's the original one man army, like almost literally.
Yeah.
There's the original First Blood, Rambo First Blood Part 2, Rambo 3, kind of a trilogy, right? Then they brought him back and made
Mm-hmm.
this. I think I don't remember where is he in Laos or he's in like Cambodia or
Mm-hmm.
something. He like
Yep. Yep.
lives there on his own, and
Like
he ends up like
Vietnam
having
or
to
something.
save these. Yeah, he's over in that area, and he's has to like save these missionaries. And that movie's ultra violent, like guts,
Fucking
heads coming
crazy.
off. It's awesome though.
He saws a guy in half with a
Yeah,
machine
like
gun.
machine gun.
Like,
It's cool. It's cool stuff.
yeah.
Last Blood wasn't my favorite. I watched it once and I was like, I don't need to watch that
It's
again.
kind of like Halloween. Like they did the reboot that we were
Yeah.
like, oh, this was
Yeah.
awesome. And
Yeah.
then
Thanks for bringing.
then they did sequels up. I was like,
Yeah. That's about right. So, number 2, we talked about this before. This is one of my all-time favorite action movies. I picked John McClane from Die Hard.
I knew he was gonna be on
Had
this
to be
list.
on there. You probably thought he was going to be number 1, but he had to be on
I
this
did
list.
actually think he was gonna be your number 1.
Every movie that came out after the original Die Hard that had the one-man army kind of motif was called different things, right? Like, Under Siege is Die Hard on a boat. I mean, that's how people would describe stuff. That's exactly what it was. Speed was Die Hard. Speed 2 was Die Hard on a cruise ship or something, that was kind of the way they described it. And he's kind of he's the everyman, right? Like Brian Mills is an ex-CIA, right? Like John Rambo is this war veteran. Like
he's fucking
John
jacked.
McClane, he's a cop. He's a New York City police officer, and he got put in bad situations multiple times. And he just has that, like, I'm not scared of anything and I don't give a fuck attitude, and just kills tons of people.
Bruce Willis plays that character so well.
He's great.
Is that.
Like the first movie's an all-time classic. The second one's I think it's a really good movie. I know it's not near as good as the first. It's a really good movie. And then I really enjoyed Die Hard with a Vengeance with Samuel L. Jackson and Jeremy Irons. I think that's a great movie too. I like the whole having to go like do these different tasks through New York City in the summer kind of deal. And
Is that the Justin Long one?
no, that's the fourth one. That's oh boy, which one's that?
I think maybe
Live Free or Die Hard. Live Free or Die
Yeah.
Hard. That's the Justin Long one. And then the fifth one's not very good, but still, John McClane. Number one, to me, there was only one clear-cut answer when it came to one-man army, John Wick. Like, I had to go with John Wick. That first movie, when it came out, was like, holy
Fucking
crap,
awesome.
what did I just watch? That is one of the best action movies ever made.
Yes.
And then they're like, it was a low budget. Like, what was, the director was, he started out as a fight choreographer before he got into directing. Mm-hmm. And they made the first one. It was great. And it was an all-time classic. And you're like, this movie's amazing. It's got a dumb premise, right? Like, I get it. They killed my dog. I get the whole backstory with the dead wife. And like, that's why he's emotionally attached to the dog and stuff. But it's such a badass movie. The whole thing. Awesome. He's such a badass. It's a
dumb premise. It's not dumb. It's a
no, but but if somebody asks you like, what's it about? You're like, oh, they kill this guy's dog and he decides to kill everybody, right? Like, I mean, that's the basic gist, right? There's more to it, but that's so. Then we're gonna make sequels, and the second one is just as good, if not better.
Yeah.
Then they make the third one, which is just as good, if not better. And now we have all this mythology with this underground world with the Continental and the High Table and all this.
Yeah, the hotel,
like they took this revenge movie and they turned it into this huge thing. Then they just come out with the fourth movie, which may or may not be the end of the franchise. And it might be the best action movie ever made. It's insane. The action's over the top. It's so many people die. He kills everybody.
Yeah. In the coolest ways. Keanu
Reeves is awesome. Again, this, like the list we did previously where it was like action stars of my childhood, Keanu Reeves wasn't on that because he'd be on it now because of John Wick single-handedly. Like, listen, Speed's great. Point Break's great. All those, but John Wick's the man.
Fucking awesome franchise.
The character.
Great movie. He he really, it was like all of a sudden the modern action star, like, because we all know that like he trains and can do like the gun run and stuff. Like,
oh yeah, those behind the scenes videos are awesome.
Yeah, the movie Nobody like feels like they were like, okay, let's do John Wick meets Home Alone 1 and make a movie, and like that's what we got. So, love that. Great list. Actually had some similarities, but also obviously there was some that are going to be way different.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had something in my list that I moved into honorable mention and switched other people kind of throughout. So my, I have a little bit less rules on mine. I didn't go like they have to be in 3 movies or anything like that.
I did that just because it was the easiest way for me to narrow my list down.
For sure. And some of mine, maybe my number one, like I might get like, is that a one-man army? Or like, these are the guys who I think are the most badass one-man armies in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Honorable mention, Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd is fucking badass. If you look if you're looking at the Stallone and the newer one with Carl Urban, he is a badass. He's a one-man army with one gun that can be 14 different kinds of guns.
Yep.
Love Judge Dredd. So jumping into my top 5, number 5, Max Rocketinsky from Mad Max. He's a badass. All of the originals, like you mentioned, you already jumped into Fury Road. Maybe there's some recency bias because I just watched Fury Road again this week because it had been a long time. But man, he's so cool. Like he's just cool. Like obviously, no one really no one references really the first Mad Max movie or the first. It's more Road Warrior where we really get into where he's like a one-man badass.
Right.
But man, super fucking awesome. Thank you, Mel Gibson. Number 4, 1 actor, 2 one-man armies, John Wick and Neo. So I got John Wick and Neo. So The Matrix And John Wick, you put Neo and those. Keanu Reeves does no wrong. He is a
No.
one-man army.
I took Neo. I took Neo off my list. Like I'm like, oh, can I put Neo? Can I put the Matrix on there?
Yeah, yeah.
And because of my rules, I was like, he's got too much help.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But
I
at the
think
same
more of
time,
like
he does
the
everything.
one.
Yeah,
When he
correct.
does that in the second movie, well, I mean, even in the first movie, but like in the second movie, you get that vibe when he like turns into Superman. You're like, holy shit, he's the one. Like,
Yep.
fucking awesome. Obviously, we talked about John Wick. Definitely in the top 5, though. My number 3. This was originally an honorable mention, but as we were doing this pod, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. He's in my list because he is so fucking badass. Cameron Poe from Con Air. What a badass. Are you kidding me? Poe, my daddy, doo-doo. Like, he is so cool in this movie. Basically, this guy who gets wrongfully, well, he gets put in jail because he's a certified killing machine who kills a guy who was messing with his wife and he was protecting her. But because he's special forces, they send him to jail. So he does his time, and on his way home, Cyrus the Virus, John Malkovich, takes over the plane, and Cameron Poe has got to be the only good guy who's a prison or a convict that's like, I'm going to save the day. And he does. And when he flows that hair in the wind with that little grin, like, you can't beat that. Number 3, Cameron Poe. Number 2, this one maybe not one-man army, maybe more superhero. I don't care. I fucking loved him. Blade. Wesley Snipes' Blade was
that's not bad.
Fucking badass, especially in number 1 and number 2. Yeah. Number 3, we're getting a little squirrely, but like number 1 and number 2, when those movies dropped,
those are great movies.
Fuck, he was so cool in that. Like his fucking sword, he was like every character that like I loved as a nerdy kid.
I was with action figures. I don't remember if I was on HBO Max or whatever the other day, and I'm like flipping through movies, just like looking, and I'm like, and Blade came up, and I was like, why have I not shown that to Reagan yet? Because she's superhero fan, horror movie fan. Why have we not watched Blade?
It's so fucking cool.
We're watching Blade.
That's one of those movies that the first movie was fucking awesome and it's standalone. It could live its own world. But then the second one came out and it felt like it got even bigger and crazier. Right. And the bad guy was really a lot cooler in the second one, in my opinion. He's like the super soldier, super shredder vampire. Anyway, so Blade, Wesley Snipes, number 2 for me. Number 1, what were you going to ask?
No, I was just going to say, I was like, I think Blade Trinity gets a bad rap because they put in too many jokes. There was a lot of trouble with Wesley Snipes on set, right? Like there's all the, like where they had to like digitally put eyeballs on him because he wouldn't open his eyes and stuff. You remember that story? And then, there's a scene where he's like laying on a table and they like had to digitally put eyes over his eyelids because he refused to open his eyes. And he like wouldn't let anybody talk to him. He's a diva. And this was before he went to prison. So I don't know if he's a diva anymore, but
this was
I think it gets a bad rap because they changed the tone too much. If I remember right, I have to go back and look, but I think David Goyer did the first movie, which didn't he help write like the Nolan Batman movies? Like, wasn't he involved with that?
Yep.
And then Guillermo del Toro did the second one, which he's like,
which makes sense.
He's a nerd
like,
king.
Characters and like props and like
it has his tone. He has a very distinct tone. You can see it. Like there's certain directors, like when you watch their movies, you're like, is this his movie? Because you can tell just kind of the way the filming and stuff is. And then, but the third one, there was a lot of that. I thought, that he's fighting Dracula in the third movie, and we're going off on Blade, but the casting for Dracula was horrible.
Terrible.
Like it was the guy from Prison Break. I think his name's Dominic Purcell. I don't remember if that's 100% correct or not, but I think it is. He's not.
It wasn't the right.
No, like Dracula needs to be like some old scary badass. Like why?
Like a super intelligent scary badass.
Call Keanu Reeves. Let him be Dracula. Let him somebody like that.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
At this time, Keanu wasn't the He
No, that
wasn't
movie's
the
not.
gem
Yeah,
that
but
we
that movie's
all.
not that old. I mean, Ryan Reynolds is in it. It's
Well, that's
not
what I
that
was gonna
old.
say. I think that actually is the reason why people didn't like it was not.
Yeah.
I mean, I fucking love
The
Ryan
tone.
Reynolds
I do
and he's
too. He's great.
badass, but
Yep.
at that time frame,
Mm.
he wasn't at the he's cool. He hadn't done Deadpool yet.
Yep.
Or maybe he had done Deadpool from X-Men Origins, and like
Oh, I don't
people
think so.
at
I think it
that.
was still before that. I think this might have led into that.
Yeah, so like he was the
He had
same
done
guy in both
right.
movies. So
He had done like Waiting and Van Wilder, like, and so
yes,
then he wanted to get, but he's ripped. He's Ryan Reynolds, so he put him in an action movie, but he's still got that cocky attitude kind of deal.
yeah, and
It
Triple
didn't,
H
yeah.
was in it. So like it did. Number one
My,
and number two is where they
yeah,
live in my world.
yeah.
So
Sorry to go on a
no, you're
tangent
good.
about
You're good.
what's wrong with Blade Trinity,
That's
but
why we have this podcast. So we can talk
mhm.
about the things we care about. And that's why we have these lists so that we can spark
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
conversations. My number one, no one in the world will have this as their number one. I don't give a fuck. My number one man army, John Mason from the movie The Rock.
Right.
This character is basically supposed to be 007
Oh
who
yeah.
had been captured and thrown
We
into
could go
jail.
into a real long discussion about that theory.
Yes. So, like The Rock, there are conspiracy theories that I actually think are true that
Yeah.
this is set in the world of James Bond,
Mm-hmm.
in that Sean Connery's character as this badass prisoner who was thrown away into a hole. Basically, they put him in solitary confinement with no lights and locked the key and left him for 60 years or whatever. He is James Bond. But they bring him into this
100%.
movie, The Rock. We basically the premise of Under Siege. A bunch of Navy SEALs take over, or ex Navy SEAL Special Forces. They take over Alcatraz in San Francisco, which is an old prison that's actually now a tourist site. So they go, they take all these hostages. They're there. So they go find this John Mason, who has been in jail for like 60 years. But the premise is he's the only man to ever have broken out of the Rock, which is another nickname for Alcatraz, who's ever broken out and survived. So he is like James Bond. He like is supposed to be helping them, help them find a way to sneak in so that the government can take out these bad guys. And he does this. He escapes in this crazy way in San Francisco, takes the cops on this insane chase with like a Ferrari going down. Actually, I think Nicolas Cage is the one who does the Ferrari. He's the one driving a Humvee.
Yeah. The guy calls him. You stole my
Yeah.
Humvee.
Yeah, you stole my Humvee. And what does he say? No one's going to mess with your Humvee or something like
something
that.
like that.
He
Yeah.
says it's super weird. But he's fucking badass in the movie. He decides he wants to help out Nick Cage's character because he's a fucking nerd. And so he goes into Alcatraz and they send basically SEAL Team 6 with them.
Yeah.
And SEAL Team 6 gets fucking taken out in the gulag, or the shower scene, which
the
is
shower.
in Call of Duty now. And when you play Call of Duty online, if you ever die, instead of you just dying and respawning, they send you to the gulag, which is literally like ripped directly from the movie. It's the shower scene area, and you have to fight one-on-one, and whoever survives gets to go back. So anyways, they all die. John Mason comes in and takes out everybody like a fucking badass. And he's old. This is old Sean Connery at this point. But like he very much is like this like suave, debonair, charismatic. I know I could kill you with a water bottle and a thing of tape. Like it's just he's cool. He is a one-man army. He can't be stopped. He apparently holds the secrets to who killed JFK.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
he is fucking cool. So
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly with the James Bond theory. I've actually read multiple articles that like pinpoint everything that points to it. Like it seems like without a doubt that's exactly what they were doing. I just had this epiphany as we're sitting here talking that neither one of us has James Bond on our list. And I'm like,
I did think about that when when I did this.
I mean, he's got help, but man, it's basically him by himself in every movie with like gadgets and stuff, It's Sometimes he has a little bit of help, but man, that's a good character too for this list. And I just feel like
When I was doing John Mason, I had that exact thought. Was like, oh,
damn.
James Bond actually is like the one man army. But
Yeah, and it's like 20 some freaking movies at this point. And he's been
Yeah.
played by Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Roger Moore, Timothy
Pierce
Dalton.
Brosnan.
I'm going in
James
order.
Bond.
I'm going in order.
Sean Connery is the James Bond, and then Pierce Brosnan.
Daniel Craig.
Daniel Craig is a cool one, but like my James Bond was those two growing up. So, actually, I wouldn't say that Sean Connery wasn't growing up, but like when I grew up,
they were the classics. Yeah,
yeah. It was like when
who's the worst James Bond?
The fucking bad guy from The Rocketeer or whatever.
Timothy Dalton.
The bad guy.
Timothy Dalton. Fucking awful. He did 2 movies.
Can you hear my kid screaming in the background?
No.
My kid is screaming in the background.
No. I did not think Timothy Dalton was a bad James Bond. I felt like his movies were bad, and not because of him.
Yeah. Is he the one where like there's like an underwater battle in that movie? Is there? Maybe I'm thinking of a different one.
It might have been in License to Kill. I think I think that's in like is that Miami in License to Kill? Boy, I haven't seen either of those in a very, very long time.
Long time. So, anyways, that's my. There can only be 5 with an honorable mention thrown in there.
Yeah, good list. I like it. I mean, yeah, we use different parameters. We had different lists. We had both had Mad Max, and we both had John Wick. Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't have Rambo on your list as a Stallone fan.
I knew that when I said earlier, like he's the poster child, that you probably immediately thought like, oh, Rambo's going to be on here. But I think when we were making this list, it's almost like you saw Under Siege and you're like, well, let's do One Man Army. And you also probably immediately thought of Rambo. Like I didn't.
I feel like he's the one you think of.
He is the one you think of, but for me personally, I didn't grow up watching them. They were like too gory and too... Like for whatever reason, that was just not something that we ended up watching. And like I only went back and watched those movies as I was older, and at that point, like I didn't really care. I didn't realize that it was more about like at least the first one was more about like soldiers having like mental health issues and like
First Blood's a very different movie. Than Rambo, the Rambo movies, right? Like First Blood's
which is like where they're sending this, like where this one man badass is going in to kill a bunch of bad guys. In the first one, it's like he is the bad guy almost,
right? Almost, but it's because he's like this Vietnam vet, and there's all these issues, and
the other one, when I was thinking of like, okay, well, Stallone's got to be in there or Arnold's got to be in there because we didn't have him on our list. My other thought was like
Commando.
The T-800 Terminator from...
I thought about that
Terminator
too.
2.
I did.
The good guy version.
Yeah.
I thought about him as my number.
Yeah. See, he actually kind of met my parameters, but again, because he's in multiple movies, but like he's a bad guy in the first one, then he's a good guy for a couple movies. So I considered it, but I felt like it was cheating. He's a robot. Cybernetic organism. Sorry. Let me get it right.
Yeah. Cybernetic organism.
Somebody's going to get mad. Cyberdyne Systems Model
Cyberdyne
101.
System Model 101.
Anyway, that wraps up our There Can Be Only 5.
Only 5.
Still need the Christopher Lambert with the sword.
We'll get it.
Got good episode. That wraps it up.
You say good shit. Good shit.
Good shit, brah. I like it. But that wraps up the episode, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're catching us on YouTube, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the like and subscribe.
Come on, guys. Hit the like. Leave your comment. I know you disagree with my list, so tell me what your thoughts are and who you would have picked.
Right. And if you can't watch us on YouTube, if you're I got like my best friend, Andrew, he's like, listen, I listen to podcasts when I'm driving or I'm working and stuff. He's like, are you on something else? And I'm like, yeah, man, absolutely. You can catch us on
goddamn right.
Spotify, Amazon Music, Podcast Index, Google Podcasts, We're still not on Apple. Don't ask me why. I'm gonna.
Do I need to make a couple
complaint.
phone calls to some people?
Maybe I'm gonna call.
Pull some strings.
Anyway, so that I'm gonna work on that this week. Hopefully, we can get added to there. It's still pending. I don't know. Maybe they don't like Kyle's content. His potty mouth gets us in trouble. Just kidding.
I am who I am.
You can also find us on social media at Movie Dads Pod, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.
And what do
Facebook
we
for the old folks.
What do they have to look forward to next week?
So next week we're going back to our regular format episode where we have a new movie. We're going to be watching the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the end of the Guardians of the Galaxy, the end of James Gunn at Marvel as he heads to DC to fill Kyle's wildest dreams.
Or he better fucking fill those dreams, God damn it.
But so Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 next week. And then in 2 weeks, we will be back with another, I can't believe you haven't seen it, decision on that movie to come because Kyle has to pick
TBD.
one.
Yeah.
He has to find something I haven't seen. Gets harder and harder every week. So
that's what she
everybody,
said.
Like I said, follow us on social media. Give us a like, subscribe, all that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Bye.